It is really wonderful to have you all here. And the overriding message we have from the foundation is we're a community of generosity. And what that means is not that we are a traditional foundation where the lucky people who work there write checks to great organizations. We do that. But the biggest thing that we do is we convene a coalition of a few thousand of the most generous people in this community. And each one of them, we hope, has a good one-on-one relationship with us, but increasingly the goal is to have a relationship with each other. So I hope one of the things you do today is just meet someone else who is also a caring fund holder and see what you can do together. And you know, I've had several conversations about what a complicated moment it is and all that. Think about walking through a tough neighborhood or going into a place where you've never known anyone before. You want someone by your side. In fact, sometimes a lot of folks. This is a tough moment and we are not alone. And the Minneapolis Foundation is exactly what we need right now to be that generous community. And it's important that we start this here in this location. It's a pretty room, but I want you to actually think about this spot in Minneapolis, because when white settlement began in this community, the narrative, and it partly was true, was that smart individuals at this location come up with some great ideas that turned a small mill on the river into the milling capital of the world. But if you really think about this location, as first those logs came down the river and created enormous wealth, it was actually extracted from one part of this state, and those people who cut down those trees, the whole lumberjack thing was not quite as romantic as it sounds. And when you really read about what it was like inside the flour mills, where these immigrants came to this country, and in those mills, they exploded, there were huge dust issues, they got all sorts of diseases. So what happened really is phenomenal wealth was created at this location, and phenomenal disparities from the start of white settlement were embedded in the economic part of this community. But so was the idea that this would be a generous community. So some of those people who were part of that were also the ones who said there should be a community foundation, the second oldest in the country here, and that's what the Minneapolis Foundation has been. We now work in 3 key areas for our discretionary dollars, all about closing gaps, equity and justice in environment, in education, and in the topic today, economic mobility. Now, we've been in economic mobility for decades. Sam Boren, who as a child was on our board of directors in the 90s, knows that at that point, we were focused more than anything on closing economic gaps. We still are today. We're proud of that work, but the gap has not really closed in that period of time, and that's sobering. But one of the things we lacked as we examined that was not that the work wasn't good, but the scale was not there. Now we have one great thing working with us. After George Floyd's murder, the whole community got much more focused on these gaps in Black entrepreneurship and Black homeownership especially. There is now a table that has pretty much every financial institution, government organization, philanthropy at a table focused on that. That is great. So our work, we have led this community in that work. Our work can now be able to surgically go at where the gaps are. And then the Phillips Foundation, as Maya mentioned, our partner is a North Minneapolis focused one. So our work about this whole community, they focus on in North Minneapolis. So we are not alone in this moment. Now, the other thing is that the issues that we're focused on here are being challenged by some government policies. This is a very complicated moment. But the calm in the storm on that is the person I'm going to introduce right now. Joanne Stately, who with Patrice Relaford leads all of our impact, has been with the foundation for a couple decades, and she wants me to not say anything about her, but I'm going to, is that Joanne was the person after George Floyd was murdered and this community was facing huge issues, led the disbursement of $50 million in grants up and down Lake Street, West Broadway, 38th, and one of the most successful efforts at rebuilding that we've ever seen. She also, just as an aside, is also leading our $60 million effort to get federal dollars that we have distributed in environmental justice. And she has done that all fairly seamlessly. from the outside. She's an amazing resource. So I want to turn it over to her for the rest of the program. Please welcome Joanne Stately.
Thank you, RT. Well, I wasn't nervous until you started mentioning all this work, and now I feel like I should be a puddle right now. I'm very pleased to see you here today and having the opportunity to learn about our economic mobility grant round and our investments that we've been doing, as RT said, for a large number of years. I've been at the foundation for 16 years, so it hasn't been a couple of decades yet. Maybe it will. And we've gone through various evolutions of when we're talking about economic vitality, economic justice, racial justice. For the past 5 years, as part of our new strategic plan, we did some revisions to what we were considering to be economic justice at that time. And then we've evolved now, after having conversations with a number of our grantees and hiring a consulting firm to help guide us, we were being prepared for what we saw was going to be a change coming in 2025. And that's one thing that the foundation has the opportunity and the luxury is to do some forecasting. And in this case, it was very timely that we had worked with this consulting firm and asked our grantees what's important for us to become more focused, more targeted on. And economic vitality really rose to the top, along with our education strategies. And with that, we became sharper and we became more focused, and allowing our grantees to bring forward their work, what we now call economic mobility. And these are the individuals that are going to be showcased today in this conversation that represent a very small section of our nonprofit sector. And when we talk about the role of the Community Foundation, our partner in community is the nonprofit sector. And that's a $100 billion industry here in Minnesota and represents 13% of the workforce. So this economic mobility and what this means transfers across everything that we do at the Minneapolis Foundation. So I'm very pleased to introduce Josh Johnson, who's our program officer who manages this fund and gets to be part of this portfolio that RT mentions that I get to manage. And Josh is responsible for managing our last grant round and having the awesome challenge to pick 4 very stellar organizations to bring before you today. And so I'm going to turn it over to Josh and look forward to this discussion. Thank you, Josh.
Hi, everyone. My name is Josh Johnson, as Joanne mentioned. I'm a program officer here at the Minneapolis Foundation. I've been with the foundation for about 4.5 years, started in our finance team, moved over to our impact team about 2.5 years ago. I've slowly made my way through the ranks in our impact team alongside Joanne, learning and absorbing everything she has to share. She's a giant in the field, and so I feel very lucky to work beside her and learn everything I know from her. So I just want to get started today. We're going to hear from 4 of our recent grantees from our Economic Mobility Grant Round. As Joanne mentioned, we had 165 applications for this grant round. We ultimately selected 50. We came in with about a $3 million budget for the grant round, and there were just too many good projects that needed support. And so we ended up funding about $3.4 million worth of work in the community. And I want to shout out Patrice Relaford here, who works with our One MPLS fund, and our fund holders here in the room who actually made a contribution to that fund, which also added to the amount that was released into the community. So I want to thank all the fund holders here who have distributed the funds to the One Minneapolis fund and all of your work that you do. Yes, round of applause. As Joanne mentioned, we made a few targeted edits this year for our grant round, including increasing the grant amount from $50,000 to $75,000, allowing for the additional capacity building, and the addition of a 25% indirect expense rate. So on top of, or included in the grant, they had 25% included for indirect expenses, staff time, printing materials, etc. Our 2025 grant round focused on capacity building and operating support. We'll have a discussion here with these 4 grantees that will last about 30 to 35 minutes, and we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for your questions. We do have a QR code on your table. Please use that QR code to submit your questions. If you do have some technical issues, we will have some mic runners around during our question and answer time. Just raise your hand and we'll get to you. If you are using the QR code, please make sure that you hit the green done button to actually submit your question. By the end of today, we hope that you all learn something new, feel inspired to act, and make a new connection. I want to start with our grantees, our panelists. I want to thank you all for being here. I know it's a big time commitment for all of you. Your leadership roles, you have a lot of responsibilities, so I appreciate you all being here today. Our strategic framework guides us to support those most affected in community and to invest in community-led solutions. I'm happy to say that all 4 of these leaders up here today are leaders that are investing in community-led solutions and doing it in an uncertain time. So I want to give a round of applause to the leaders here today for all of their hard work, especially in these uncertain times. I want to let the panelists introduce themselves, allow them to say a little bit about their history, the work that they do, and their organization. So I will start with Kathy here.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, thank you. My name is Kathy Hine, and I am the founder and executive director of the Lift Garage, a nonprofit auto repair shop in South Minneapolis. My background is in social work. I have a master's in pastoral ministry, and so I did the logical next move and got an associate's degree in auto technology. That's how it goes, right? So, yeah, exactly. So it was my work in social work that led me to see the huge need for affordable and accessible car repair, and that's where the Lift Garage came from. I'm really happy to be here. When Josh said we have like 30 minutes for the entire panel, I'm like, I can't even clear my throat in 30 minutes, but I'm going to do my best to share the stage with others. So, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Uran. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the managing director of Compass Pro Bono, and I am the co-founder of Girls on the Run Minnesota, which is what brings me to this work after 10 years, transitioned out of that role and was actually a client of Compass's in their pilot season in 2022 and received a team of amazing volunteer consultants, their help in our decision to grow into Greater Minnesota. They built us a blueprint for growth, and spoiler alert, Girls on the Run is now statewide, so it worked. And I'm excited to share more today about how we build capacity, provide technical assistance, and support really the community-based organizations that need to stay around here in the Twin Cities and Greater Minnesota.
Good morning, I'm Warren McLean. I'm president of NEON, the Northside Economic Opportunity Network. I've been with NEON for about 7 years. Prior to that, I was with the Community Reinvestment Fund. I was the senior vice president, chief development officer there. And then I was president of META for about 10 years. So been in this field for more than 30 years. Delighted to be here. I think North Minneapolis is at an inflection point. There's lots of investment that is going into North Minneapolis, and happy to share what we're doing there.
Hi there, my name is Anna Schmitz. I'm the executive director of Whittier Alliance, which is the Whittier Neighborhood Association. So for folks who don't know, Whittier is Lake Street to Franklin and then 35W to Lyndale. About 14,000 folks live there. I'm a Twin Cities lifer. I grew up in St. Paul and Frogtown. Actually, I told my mom that I was going to be on this panel, and she was like, I'm coming. She's right over there, so I haven't made it so far. And I've worked in community organizing, digitally, politically, and field for about a decade, was at Planned Parenthood before coming to Whittier Alliance.
Thank you. As you can see, we have a wide variety of organizations up here that fall under the economic mobility umbrella. And so I really want to dig in a little bit deeper. And I'll start with Anna. How do you view your work as catalytic to economic mobility?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there's a few different ways that you can view that in the work that we're doing right now. I think that there's what we applied for this grant for, which is helping support small businesses that are in Whittier. Whittier has these really amazing commercial corridors. So thinking about Nicollet, Eat Street, Lake Street, where you have Carmel Mall, the biggest Somali mall in the country, Lindale, Franklin. We're really lucky to have those small business communities, and they're at a tough point. Like Warren was saying, I think kind of an inflection point where COVID's over, and but maybe then kind of some of the investment that was coming in from COVID, or the excitement of like we have to support small businesses, has kind of died down, but the traffic hasn't picked up. In our neighborhood, there is a lot of construction happening, as people who've driven around there probably know. First Ave and Nicollet are going to be opening up, but they're not opened up yet. And so small businesses are kind of feeling the impact. So we are working to bring folks together. We had our first small business meeting just last week to kind of be that organization. Small business owners are busy. They're not able to take the time, to take the hour out of their day to put together the email listserv and make sure that there's scones ready and, put out all the chairs. But we can do that. So we're bringing folks together and listening to what's coming up for them. So that was what we heard, that folks are being impacted by the construction, that they need ways to come together. They need that connection. They need to talk to each other. They need to figure out what's working. And we're really going to work on building that momentum, bringing folks together. And then, separate from that, thinking about still that small business lens, just yesterday, I was meeting up with a community partner who works along Carmel, works with folks who have the small businesses there, and we went to visit the small businesses where their windows have been shot. Last week, there was somebody who drove down Lake Street and shot out windows at some of the businesses just right across the street from Carmel. So telling them about the facade grant that the city offers, where they can get matching funds for rebuilding after that. So that's some of the work that we're doing kind of on that a little bit more obvious connection, economic mobility connection to small businesses. But then I think we see it a little bit broader too, that part of economic mobility is ensuring that the neighborhood is thriving across the board, that there aren't vacant houses where there's trash piling up, where people feel safe when they're walking around, and where there's opportunities for connection and coming together. So we have monthly community dinners where we have monthly trash pickups, and we're also kind of thinking a little bit more broadly too about, are there ways that we can plug in to ensure that houses that are vacant don't stay vacant for years? Are there ways that we can kind of move that process forward, encourage folks to sell to folks who are going to move into those houses? We have a housing shortage, right? So thinking kind of broadly about how do we make sure that these communities are thriving, because I think that my view is that Whittier is a neighborhood that kind of is indicative of how the rest of the city is doing, where if Whittier is thriving, which is a neighborhood where there are $2 million homes, and then there's homeless shelters 2 blocks away, there's small businesses, there's Carmel Mall, there's the Art Institute, where if all of those institutions are able to thrive, I think that's a pretty good sign that the city is thriving as well.
Yeah, thank you. Warren, how do you see your work as economic mobility?
Well, Neon worked last year with 1,920 clients, which is huge, a record year for us. We dispersed about $1 million in loans. But what do we do? And I think, as Anna talked about, there have been vacant lots in North Minneapolis. There are 100 of them, and most of them cannot be. They've remained vacant primarily because the larger white developers, that's a project that's too small for them, and the black developers didn't have the money to do that. We got $1 million PRI from Jan Rose Phillips Family Foundation, and with that money, we've been able to actually help black developers develop those vacant properties and put them back into service. And so we've done about 15 of those. We've dispersed about $2.1 million to help that. So that's one way that we've advanced economic mobility. And then right now, we're building a 25,000 square foot facility, which is a commercial kitchen. It's $21 million. It's going to support about 270 businesses, and it'll be built and finished in January. So we think that, number one, it's a catalytic investment because it's in North Minneapolis. It's right next to the Capri Theater. It's going to provide, for every dollar invested, it will provide $28.11 back to the community. And that was we know that because a study was done by the University of Minnesota Extension. So these numbers have been, certified. So that's the kind of work that we do. Last year we helped start about 224 businesses. We helped create about 225 jobs, and we helped retain about 718 jobs. So we're really strong in that. And then 90% of our clients are BIPOC, 80% are African American, and after 5 years, 90% of them are still in business, which is that's a huge number. So, and then to give specific examples, we have one client that during COVID, they were a caterer. All of their contracts were canceled in one day. So they were virtually didn't know what they were going to do. They had to pivot. So they created a wellness tonic, and that tonic took off during the period. And so a person who was kind of close to being on welfare and homeless now has purchased a duplex and owns that. It's a single mom. And our son said to her, "Mom, are we rich?" So we've had those, and we've got multiple examples of like that. So that's the kind of work that we've done to advance economic mobility.
Wow. Thank you, Warren.
What's the name of the tonic?
I'll get it for you.
Check under your seat.
You can talk.
Well, we think of Compass Pro Bono as supporting economic mobility kind of in two different ways. Number one, like you heard, nonprofit industry, 13% of our economy. It's a strong sector. We cannot allow nonprofits to fail, especially right now when they're asking to do more with less. And so we come in and help build infrastructure efficiencies to let nonprofits do what they do best. We also consider this economic mobility as a pass through to the beneficiaries of the nonprofits. So you think of Pillsbury United, who has North Market in North Minneapolis. They came to us and said, we need to figure out how to make this not a resource drain, but a resource add. And so we pulled together a team across different sectors. We had someone who from P&G who's excellent at understanding consumer decision-making and things like that. And other team members who brought skills that a nonprofit typically doesn't have access to. We helped the nonprofit scope the project so it was focused. We knew exactly what the deliverables needed to be. And in June, they brought it to the board to say, okay, this is go or no go. Are we moving forward to keep North Market sustainable and kind of a new path forward, a new strategy, or are we going to shutter its doors? And with the help of the team, they were able to find a path forward, and we hope that it continues. So I think it's going to take all of us to meet the moment, and in times of uncertainty, we have to ground ourselves in strategy, and we can't be, quickly reacting. We need to stand firm in our values, in how we operate as nonprofits, and if we have a strong infrastructure and base, that we can stick around and be sustainable for the coming years.
Thank you. Kathy.
Mobility is like not quite in our name, but close. I mean, it's so I'd have been disappointed if we hadn't gotten the grant. But I'm just kidding. Of course, the obvious answer to that is people have reliable transportation, can get regularly to work, regularly to school, regularly to their medical appointments. That's an obvious way that we are advancing economic mobility. But it's broader than that because it is. I loved when RT was talking about community, that we have to be together in community because it's about people feeling confident. When you can get to your kids' parent-teacher conference, you feel like a better parent, and when you feel like a better parent, you feel more confident in other parts of your life, and all of those things impact community. That energy goes out, and how you show up at your work, at your school. I just, total happenstance, last December I was at my health clinic, which happens to be just across the parking lot from the lift, and a nurse walked in and I was wearing a lift shirt, and she said, "Oh, do you work at the lift garage?" I said, "I do." She said, "You guys saved my family." And I said, "Tell me more." And she's like, my elderly mom, fixed income. I'm a single mom. She was a single mom, and she takes care of my daughter. So I can work full time at a clinic that does a lot of work with immigrant populations and other communities in need. And without my mom having a working car, we would have had to pivot, and I might not have been able to keep working. And she told this amazing story about the ripple impacts over 3 generations of women because we were able to help fix her mom's car and keep it on the road. So it's like that. It is literal economic mobility of moving people to jobs, but it is all the ways that that fans out to create more positive impact in the community.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. So we see all of the great work that you all are doing in the community. There are a ton of other organizations out there doing great work in the community, but it's hard right now. There's uncertain times. There's a lot of different policy implications. There's a lot of funding implications that are happening both state, locally, federally. And if we think about Minnesota specific, the biennium, they're thinking about a potential $6 billion deficit. That's going to be huge. That's going to be major cuts to local and state programming. 82% of nonprofits reported that their expenses have increased over the past 12 months, and 67% have also indicated that they have less than 12 months of funds available to survive. And so with all of these disruptions in both federal funding and policy, Kathy, I imagine it's very difficult for you to source auto parts. What does that look like for your business, for your organization, and how is that affecting your clients and the people that you help?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. We've been watching the tariff stuff really closely as it relates to auto parts and how that impacts the bigger auto industry in general. If you haven't bought a car lately, even a used car is ridiculous amount of money. So what we see, and we've seen this trend really since COVID, is people investing in really crappy cars. I mean, cars that in a perfect world, we'd be like, you know what, you've done your service, move on. And so it's kind of that, good money after bad idea where it's like we're just continuing to funnel, and that's, I think, going to continue to get worse as car parts get more expensive, then cars are going to get more expensive, and on it goes. And so how do we keep that whole process moving, and how do we find that right balance between people having access to a car versus driving, just where's that line, I guess. And sort of related, right now customers pay for parts, and so they're the ones theoretically that will feel more of the impact of parts costs. We will honor an estimate for up to 30 days, and right now if that part changes between the time you get the estimate and the time you come back to get the work done, we just eat that. We've been having conversations about, well, depending on how big that gap becomes, can we afford to absorb that difference? And so just, small things like that just really have this flood of an impact. And so I could carry on a lot more, but I'll stop.
Okay. I appreciate that.
It's fair. It's fair. It's very fair.
Anna, I'm going to you next.
Keep it short, Anna, clearly. Pressure's on.
Your organization doesn't receive federal funding, But how are you seeing the direct and indirect effects in your neighborhood and with your constituents who also live in the neighborhood?
Yeah, absolutely. So this actually came up just this past week. I was visiting Whittier Park to see the Natural Leaders Program, which is a free camp program run by Minneapolis Community Ed. It's got 100 little kids running around. They're building a stream in the ground. They're running up to show me that they've made a dam so that the stream's not going into the construction site. They're all named after, like, their groups are named after different rivers. It's an amazing program. It's right in the middle of the city. The leader of the program, his name is Nacho, he said that his idea for it was that, he grew up in Southwest Minneapolis, and he did a summer camp program that had been going around for 30 years, and it's still happening. And he wanted something like that in Whittier, instead of a program where it's here this year, then it's maybe not there that year, and then maybe there's a grant, so it's back this next year. And so he built that at Whittier with Natural Leaders, and it's been going on for 15 years now. There's kids who go through from kindergarten to 8th grade, and then they become counselors. And it's that real source of stability and something to do in the summer, which is crucial. And I was just talking to him and, asking how things are going, and he said, well, yeah, so next year our funding level currently is 0 because the program is funded by a federal grant program that comes through Community Ed, and so we don't know what's going to happen next year. So that's kind of one example of what we're hearing, what the impacts are going to be, those kind of like second level ripples that you maybe wouldn't have thought of. And of course, there's the first level ripples too, where Whittier is a lower income neighborhood. There's people on Medicaid who won't be on Medicaid anymore. There's going to be these impacts across the board. And I think we're definitely going to be feeling it as a neighborhood, and we're going to be trying to see where we can kind of step in, fill in, help support these programs, help bring resources into the neighborhood to ensure that folks have that continuity that's so important.
And as a neighborhood organization, how have you seen your funding change over the last, we'll say, 5 to 10 years? And how has that affected your neighborhood and other neighborhood organizations like yours?
Sure. Yeah. So this is getting into a little bit of like Minneapolis political weeds a little bit, but so bear with me for the acronyms. I'm sure you know about this. So there's a program called the Neighborhood Revitalization Program in the 90s that funneled quite a bit of money into neighborhood organizations, really seeing them as those kind of like that first level, boots on the ground, micro kind of unique forms of government almost, or connections to resources. And that funding source, that kind of big pot of money has dried up and it's non-renewable. Some organizations are still kind of hanging on to some of the last little bits of that money from the 90s. We have some of that that we're going to try to really get out the door and into the hands of people. We don't see the interest, so it's in our best interest to move it out. But then now the renewable form of income that neighborhood organizations get is a much smaller pot of money. It's from the Neighborhood Community Relations Department of the city. And so it's distributed through like an equity-based formula. So Whittier does get more of that money than your Tangletown does. But it's much smaller, and it means that neighborhood organizations have to really be thinking critically about how they can make the most impact with limited resources, and how we can be the most strategic in thinking about how do we use this non-renewable funding that we still have to make a difference that will really be long-lasting in the neighborhood, instead of just kind of, it was there this year and now it's gone next year and there's no more coming back. So that's what we're really kind of trying to think about right now.
Thank you. Mary, we just heard how Whittier is thinking differently. Compass Pro Bono also thinks differently, including their return of investment. Can you please talk about how your organization thinks differently and the additional benefits that you see in community outside of those financial impacts or the things that we might initially see or think of?
Sure. Well, first of all, we have the lowest rates of volunteerism since like the early 2000s. And when we think of return on investment for programs like these pro bono skill-based volunteerism, we're seeing huge benefits in volunteers, whether they're saying, I am somewhat of an entry-level data analyst and use this experience to be able to get a promotion at work. And because I could step into leadership, learn from other types of problem solving, things like that. We also hear a lot from volunteers, especially right now. I want to get involved, but I don't know how. I want to join a nonprofit board, but I don't know how. And then we're also hearing nonprofits say, we need board members. So trying to be the bridge between, oh, you have skills in human resources, huge capacity gap right now in nonprofits. We know all of these nonprofits that need your skills. We're going to train you as a potential board member and place you on a board. And seeing that ROI then of someone getting to really understand their community, bring their business skills into a nonprofit that wouldn't normally have access to it. I mean, everybody wins, and you see kind of that ripple effect. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned Compass Pro Bono. Every dollar invested into the organization
Yes.
is $10 to $20 poured into the community.
Exactly.
You also have a formula of 1 + 1 = 3.
Yes.
Can you please share more about that?
Yeah, that we bring, our goal is cross-sector collaboration. We know that it's not just, one project experience and the outcome is just that deliverable. What we want to see is a volunteer that says, well, I'm going to join this board now of Dress for Success because I've seen the inner workings of the organization and I love it, right? Or we received that decision support project and now we're seeing this incredible effect of growing out into the state and being able to actually efficiently and effectively provide services to girls that really need it. Yeah.
Thank you. So as you can see, there's a lot of ripple effects from investment into organizations like these. Warren, can you share, you mentioned $2.11 return on investment, 224 businesses, 718 jobs retained, 225 more created, the $1 million out to 12 entities. What are the ripple effects you're seeing from the work of NEON, particularly on the north side?
Okay, I want to correct one number. It was $1, and you got $28.11 return.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have 2811 on my note, so I just misread. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So repeat the question. I just thought about that. I was so focused on that.
Oh no. So $28.11. We see the ripple effects from investments into organizations like yours. Can you share a few ripple effects you're seeing on the north side?
Well, the north side is going through, like I said, an inflection point. And I think as RT mentioned, he talked about the fact that the giving has been focused on how they're trying to address surgically what's happening in the community. And so, and black and brown communities, particularly North Minneapolis, there's been an infusion of capital that's occurred there. And then you have a lot of entrepreneurs, black entrepreneurs, who are intentionally investing in North Minneapolis. So we've got buildings going up. We got one of our entrepreneurs, Tim Baylor. He's not my entrepreneur, but he's been around for a long time. He's put up Satori Village, which is a $60 million facility. You have V3, that's a multi-million-dollar facility. You have Houston White, who's done Camden Town. You've got Chris Webley. You've got Tito Wilson. And all those investments are intentional. We have Frank Brown, who moved from his business from South Minneapolis to North Minneapolis and bought 2 additional businesses and bought a building in North Minneapolis. That was intentional. And all of these investments are intentional. They can go other places, but they're doing it in North Minneapolis. And then I think our facility, which is again a 25,000 square foot facility, $21 million facility, no debt on it, is a pouring and also is catalytic because it's in that point, in that part of the community on West Broadway, there's a lot of Black-owned businesses there. So it's sort of a nexus for businesses in that part of the community. So it's just all that is encouraging other developers to step forward, so the other entrepreneurs to step forward. And so you just see this coalescence of activity where the community is coming together and saying, we want to change the narrative of North Minneapolis. We want to change it. Our goal is to change it from a drive-through to a destination. And so that's our goal. I mean, in fact, our vision is to transform North Minneapolis into a prosperous, visible, sustainable, and highly diverse multicultural community of entrepreneurs. And so the goal is transformation. It's not renewal, it's transformation. And I think what we're seeing is that people are intentionally, the Black entrepreneurs are intentionally investing in North Minneapolis. We're amongst that, and we're supporting that with our capital fund. So now there's a Groundbreak Coalition. We've gotten a $2 million allocation for that. We got $2 million from U.S. Bank, so we're now up at $5.5 million, and we'll be investing that money into entrepreneurs in North Minneapolis to help the community thrive.
Yeah, and when we invest in organizations like Neon, those investments continue to circle in that economy. And so, as Warren was saying, it has multiple effects besides on just your investment into an organization like Neon. It spreads out through the community almost like a spider web where it has multiple touch points on people who may not even know who Neon is. So it's important when we think about investing in organizations like these, we really think how deep these investments can really go for our fund holders. I just want to remind everyone here to submit your questions using the QR code. We'll be getting to those shortly. If you're having issues, please just raise your hand once we get to the question and answer portion, and we'll get to your questions. But I do want to ask one sort of final question up here for our panelists, specifically to Kathy. Your organization has grown quickly over time. How have you ensured that capacity growth is both strategic and sustainable and also strengthens your mission? What has been the most essential sort of infrastructure, personal investment that you've made in your organization that's shown benefits?
Whew, there's a lot in there. And you're going to cut me off in like
Nope.
30 seconds, aren't you? That's how this is. Setting me up to fail.
You have 5 minutes. Go.
Yeah, so the Lift was founded in 2013. 12 years later, we've gone from having no budget to about a $2.1 million budget, no employees to 16 employees. So the growth has been pretty rocket speed. It's been a challenge to figure out exactly how you said that, to grow sustainably. And as I've said to my fellow panelists, it's one skill set to found an organization. It's a very different skill set to grow and maintain an organization. And I'm finding that in myself as the leader. And so I've had an amazing board. We've had a lot of success fundraising. That doesn't mean you should not give, because we still need more. I'm happy to talk to anybody about that. Sustainable dollars has made the difference. I mean, auto repair, and it's a capital heavy investment. I mean, it takes a lot of equipment, a lot of things. And so the idea to grow, we need to know that we are going to have money to pay for all of that equipment. And I mean, we are subsidizing our customers. So we charge $25 an hour for labor. Average market rate labor in the Twin Cities is about $150, upwards of $200, and usually a 200% markup on parts, sort of. So we are subsidizing probably about $1,000 to $1,500 per car that we fix overall. Having sustainable dollars, having people make multi-year commitments has been a huge, huge asset for us. So that's been some of our success, but we really are at a question, like I have literally 30 cars sitting in my 10-car parking lot right now, and we cannot keep up, and we've been talking about growth and how do we grow sustainably? How do we do it in a way that doesn't impact our main operation? And we just are doing a feasibility study right now to examine our options for growth. You know, it's there's so many layers to it. But one of the last things I will say is one of the ways that we got support from the Minneapolis Foundation is thinking about leadership. I think any nonprofit leader will tell you that a sole executive director model is really brutal. It's a lonely job, even when you have an amazing staff around you. And so we're really looking at knowing that I don't necessarily have the right skill set to maintain. I have the vision. So how do we transition my role into more fundraising, public speaking, the stuff that I'm good at, passionate about, while building collaborative leadership and not just replacing me with another single ED. So we're really doing some deep exploring about collaborative leadership styles, shared decision making, things like that, while also sort of letting me do what I do best. So I got jokes too. So
Well, you're doing a great job today.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Mary, how are you seeing in nonprofits, as Kathy said, this shared leadership model, sort of spreading the responsibilities amongst different leaders, making sure that there's not burnout? How are you seeing that amongst nonprofits? And also, what are the biggest gaps you're seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of my favorite things I'm seeing right now is creative governance. And so it's more shared leadership between board and staff, not the hierarchical top down. The staff is boots on the ground. Why are we having board members make these big decisions without input or that shared relationship? And so helping nonprofits, from our perspective, building board governance structures and organizational governance structures that fit their needs, right? So, and it is not, of course you have to check the boxes of legal things. Legal Corps would tell you that, yes. But there's actually not that many legal requirements you need to hit. Why don't we dream up a governance structure that works for the organization? And doing that in a shared leadership between board and staff is really important. Some of the gaps we're seeing, actually what I'm excited about is technology strategy. Lots of nonprofits, they don't have access to the incredible and sometimes questionable ethics of AI. And we're helping think through, how do we beat burnout at a nonprofit staff level by taking the minutia and the mundane and being able to ethically and kind of through change management, using AI to be able to make our nonprofits more efficient and effective, so that I can be out in relationship in the community and have access to technology to help us do the rest.
Very interesting. Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes left in our program. I'm going to go to Joanne Stately for audience questions. Raise your hand if you have a question.
I have a question too.
Oh.
Already.
Takara will also be a mic runner as well. Joanne.
So I'm a current fund holder, and I understand that the Minneapolis Foundation provides $75,000 grants. But our grants tend to be $2,500, maybe $5,000, maybe $10,000. And this is specifically for Anna and Kathy. If you had that type of funding available, how would you use that immediately?
The 2,500, 5,000, 10,000? Yeah. I mean, I always say that the lift is built on nuns and do-gooders, and because most of what we get in to run the place is, I have a nun who gives us $5 a month and has for years. So, like, to us, 2,500, 10,000 is huge dollars, and like that it is a whole bunch of community coming together to create the world we want, to create economic mobility for folks. And so I would take that money, and we're paying our techs competitive wages with Bobby and Steve's and Walzer on a nonprofit budget. So we're balancing that competition, and so that money is going to help us keep qualified, skilled technicians.
Yeah, absolutely. So, two things. So, I mentioned we do monthly community dinners. We get our food from local restaurants in Whittier. We have a $750 budget for every monthly dinner, and that feeds 50 people who come through. It's kids at the rec center. It's folks coming in to learn about the Safe Routes to Schools program at the city. It's anybody who wants to come through the door. So $750, that's one of our community dinners right there. Something else we're doing is we're partnering with Alliance Housing. We bought a vacant lot in the neighborhood. We're partnering with Alliance Housing to build 53 units of deeply affordable housing in the neighborhood. And part of what we're going to be doing coming up soon, we're still working on, building out the whole funding structure, particularly for the ground floor. So at a little bit more than the $5,000 level, but at the $5,000 level, we're going to be doing engagement around public art. We're going to be doing engagement with folks who have experienced homelessness around what they want this building to look like, what they want the amenities to be, and we're going to be bringing folks together. So that community piece, like Kathy was talking about, that's all kind of comes together with food, with building rentals, with, by the way, things that we can't charge the city for, actually. The city doesn't pay for food. And so that kind of lower dollar amount allows us to do really the bread and butter of what our programming is, which is bringing folks together, learning from the people who are being most impacted, and seeing what we can do to build out resources that provide them with what they need.
We have a question here.
Question for you, Kathy. Do you guys use volunteers for mechanic, tech kind of thing, or have you ever considered creating a training program as well?
Great questions both. We no longer use volunteers as techs. In the beginning, it was me and all volunteers. The volume of business that we do is so huge that I need to be confident in the skills, and I need people who can be there all day, every day. So we just have found that more volunteers in that particular skill require a lot more oversight than when we can just hire techs to do it. Like, I don't have time to pay my techs to make sure that break job. The liability is so huge in the industry. So we use volunteers in lots of other parts of our organization, but not really as technicians. My original vision was a training program. I had the whole vision was like 3 times bigger than it actually is, but I'm glad it all got pared down, honestly. But because that's, there's interesting things to think about that way. We dropped that pretty quickly because, again, we just decided to stay hyper-focused on low-cost car repair. But we have great partnerships with Newgate. We host interns through some of the tech schools. I have a great relationship with Dunwoody, and where I went to school. And we do a lot of work study students through their auto tech program. So we do have connections to students, but not a formal training program.
Another question for the whole panel. Given that this is about changing times, on a comfort level of 1 to 5, how do you rate yourselves and your organizations today?
Okay, I have to say, this is harder than the pandemic to go through. And that is saying a lot, because it was so, like, we flipped a switch and our whole business model changed, at least at Girls on the Run. What makes it so hard, people are really thinking, let's do scenario planning. You can't even scenario plan for a change that's happening next week. And so I think we're continuing to go back to grounding ourselves in our values, what we know and can control, the infrastructure that we've built ourselves on. But it feels much more uncomfortable than even 5 years ago. And the other difference is, everybody was handing out money 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. Everybody is freezing right now. We are seeing corporations, of course, they don't know what kind of funding they can give out, or foundations, or even individuals. And so I love the campaign that Minneapolis Foundation is doing, the Get Off Your Asset. We need people to take risks right now and fund nonprofits. There you go.
Anyone else from the
This might be a question for the foundation, but not that there's money floating all around, but when you see money on one side of the wall and it can't get to the other side of the wall, and you have thousands of nonprofits, what's the foundation do to strategically widen those places that are too narrow to get the money flowing?
That's a great question. We obviously build great relationships with the organizations that we support. We have an open door policy with organizations in the community and hope that if any barriers they encountered, for example, they see this grant round that they want access to, but they just don't have the capacity. For example, with our EPA funding, we partnered with 3 other organizations because we had the capacity and the back office staff to do all of the work to get in that grant round, be able to disperse those dollars into community that they would otherwise not have the opportunity to access. And again, that just creates those ripple effects that we see throughout community.
Josh, do you think you should maybe mention the BFF fund right now?
Yes, the BFF. We are in the midst of a program that is called the BFF Fund. Sarah, I hate to put you on the spot, would you like to share a little bit about the BFF Fund that we are hosting with nonprofit leaders throughout the Metro?
Yes. It happened to be called the BFF Fund. It's a Building Forward Fund. We have a group of 11 community and nonprofit leaders, including R.T. Ryback, that have come together to collectively determine where they can give in community. We started with a hefty investment approved by our board, and then we've continued to get support from fund holders. And we know that this is a huge challenge, and the group got together and was really clear about they're going to do $75,000 grants to bold and courageous leaders. They're really clear that this will not solve the problem. It's about seeding and accelerating shifts and pivots and just moving differently than you have, and really bolstering and investing in strong leadership. And it's done by community leaders that have sat in those positions that are determining where we invest those funds.
I would just add that once we get that list, we'll turn around to fund holders and say, you might want to co-invest. We started with 600,000. It is now $1 million, in part because somebody in this room made a generous grant. And if that person sort of signaled to me that it was okay to use their name, I would do it.
It was me. It was me. Oh.
Generous contribution. I really want to thank Sam Boren and Steve King for making a very generous contribution that allows us to give out $1 million, and we hope others hear that and see that this group of all-stars in the nonprofit ecosystem said everything matters right now, but here's some ones to really go at.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We have one more question for Mary. How does Compass approach working with more organizations in need of support, and how are you approaching balancing growth with lower volunteerism rates?
Yeah, that's a great question. Volunteers are out there. We have to find them. And that means showing up in spaces, whether that's like corporate employee resource groups or MBA alum programs. I also think we're expanding our definition of what a great pro bono skill-based volunteer is. You don't have to have an Ivy League MBA to participate with us. We'll provide training, tools. You bring your own best self, and let's do a project together. We are seeing a lot of need. We're expanding. We're listening to nonprofits and launching an executive coaching pro bono program where we've seen a huge outpouring from certified executive coaches that say, we want to give back this way, and connecting them has been fantastic. So listening and trying to shift our focus to, okay, what do we need in the moment? And then let's pound the pavement and get these volunteers in and trained and ready to go.
Thank you, Mary. We have just a few minutes left, so I want to make sure that I do some house cleaning items, but I also want to ask you one last question. It'll sort of be rapid fire with your response. So what is one thing, whether it's your organization, your work, what's one thing you want our fund holders to take with them when they leave today? Kathy, I can start with you.
People are working really hard, and there's a huge myth out there, I think, about nonprofits not being efficient, nonprofits not, there's fraud, and unfortunately there's been a couple of high-profile cases that do not help the cause. Almost every other nonprofit I know is working their tails off with not enough money to meet a mission that is never ending, and so I want you to trust us.
Kathy, you stole mine. Because I was going to say nonprofits are savvy. They have to, they're running a business, right? And so we need to trust the leaders that are closest to the ground, and that's where the money needs to go, and the wraparound support, which is where we come in. So I will say fund everybody and also fund the wraparound capacity builders.
Warren?
That the work needs to be done over a long period of time. So a lot of the problems that have been created have been created over many decades. And so it's not a short-term solution. So it's owning the solution or investing over multi-periods of time. So multi-year grants, I think, are critical. And also general operating support, because you're investing in an entity and not a specific program. And I think what you want to do is fund the entity because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So I think you want to make sure you do that.
Thank you, Warren. Anna.
Yeah. I think what I would say is that people who live in Minneapolis, people who work in Minneapolis, own businesses, love this city. That's what we hear when I'm out in community, out in neighborhood, at National Night Out. People are saying, I love Minneapolis, I love Whittier, and I want to see this happen. I want to see that. I want to, feel safe walking my kid to work, or walking my kid to school. I want to be able to afford to stay in my house. I want to have a place where my neighbor who's unsheltered can stay, can live. And I think that there are big challenges, and we're kind of on this precipice where these challenges need to be met. And I think that is, in some ways, an exciting place to be, where we can find new ways of kind of rising to this moment. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. So today we've heard from 4 great leaders about values, leadership, trust, investing. There's a lot of great orgs doing great work out in the community. I hope you found a connection today. I hope you read about the other organizations that are doing great work that we supported through this grant round. But all of the other organizations, if you're interested in learning about them, talk to your PA, get connected, invest in these organizations. I want to give our panelists one round of applause for the last time. They've been so generous with their time and talents today. I appreciate all of your work, all of the pre-work. I know it came together quickly, but I appreciate all of your commitments. I want to thank RT and Joanne today for their leadership at the foundation, for introducing you all to this grant round, and to our panelists up here. But before we adjourn, I just wanted to discuss that this meeting was recorded, so you will get a link sent to your email. Please share that with your networks. Any of your fellow fund holders who you may know who weren't able to make it this morning. Make sure that you connect again with our list of grantees from this year. And again, invest in the work and the leadership that is up on this stage. Lastly, I'd like to plug our next major event, which is the Minnesota meeting. Next in News is our theme this year. We'll be bringing together innovators working locally and nationally to reimagine the future of journalism and bring our community together. It'll feature Kara Swisher, who is an award-winning podcast host and CNN contributor and editor-at-large at the New York Magazine. This event will be held Wednesday, October 8th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Just across the road at the Nicollet Island Pavilion. With that, that's the end of our event today, and I want to thank you all for being here.